From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 2 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
There's a world of investment opportunities out there. Spotting them takes experts on the ground, assessing potential firsthand. Templeton, a pioneer in global investing for over 50 years. Gain from our perspective.
If. For such a small word, it packs a wallop. If I live to 100, if Social Security isn't enough, if my heart gets broken, if she says yes. We believe if should never hold you back. If should be managed with a plan that builds on what you already have. Together, we can create a personal safety net, a launching pad for all those brilliant ifs in the middle of life. You can call on our expertise and get guarantees for the if in life. After all, we're MetLife.
Issue 1, BP blame game.
This is a siege across the entire Gulf. This spill is holding everybody hostage, not only economically, but physically. There will be oil out there for months to come.
The quote-unquote months that Admiral Thad Allen appears to be referring to are the months it will take to drill 2 new wells called relief wells. An estimated 2.5 months, mid-June to late August, those relief wells will theoretically steal the oil from beneath the current escape route and divert the gusher to 2 new intercepting wells, which in turn will catapult it to waiting container ships. This blueprint is stabilizing, but with up to 50 million gallons already in the water, a partial stoppage of the oil in place, and more reduced leakage to come, the crisis goes on, endangerment spreads, and most of it poisonous. Some critics are asking, where's the president, not the BP president, but the U.S. president, during this hemispheric crisis?
We learned today he hasn't even spoken with the chief executive officer of BP. How can it be that the person who's actually doing the work to try and cap this spill hasn't even spoken to the president of the United States? It's the president's job to be leading this entire effort.
Governor Romney contrasted Obama with other crisis managers. Rudy Giuliani, mayor of New York, 9/11. JFK, U.S. president, Cuban Missile Crisis.
That's what leaders do. Hey, look, these guys at BP have done some very bad things, and they ought to pay through the nose, and there may well be criminal liability. But now is the time for action, not the time just for rhetoric and talk.
Romney says blame is one thing, management is another.
He has instead spent his time blaming people. I frankly think that he's shown that in a crisis setting where there's a deepwater oil spill, he's out of his depth. He just does not have the experience to actually lead. He's a great speaker, but not a great leader.
Question, is Romney right? Is Obama a great speaker, but not a great leader? Pat Buchanan.
The truth is, Romney has nailed it, John, and that's what the country thinks right now. It was extraordinarily effective, and the Rudy Giuliani is exactly right. You remember Rudy became the personification of New York defiance. He was involved, engaged, 5 press conferences a day all over this thing. And what Romney is doing here, and I think it's one of the best things he's done in a long time, is indirectly, passively contrasting himself as an executive, a business guy who makes decisions on top of things, with this diffident lawyer, if you will, who hadn't even called the head of BP in something like 60 days. Can you imagine Lyndon Johnson? The first day that happened, the second day, that guy would have been in Johnson's office. He would have had him by the lapels and been in his face saying, what in the bleep is going on and what are you going to do about it?
Ellen, what about this?
I do agree that the president was too deferential to BP in the early going. He believed in their assurances that they could get this under control, and he also believed in the technology. He couldn't believe that, we can send a man to the moon, we can't plug a hole in the ocean. The thing is, we know more about the surface of the moon than we know about the floor of the ocean. But you talk to the governors on the ground in the Gulf, Republican governors, they are saying this president is doing everything he can. The bureaucracy is slow because it is bumping up against the enormity of this spill, which is the biggest environmental disaster we have faced. And you can fault this president for not having enough in the way of theatrics early on, but he's making his 4th trip to the Gulf. He met with the families of those who were killed in the explosion. The BP executives are coming to the White House next week. And, you know, you can shake the BP executive by the lapel. Does anyone believe that BP is dragging their feet on this? They've got as much at stake as the president does, certainly in plugging this
But the
hole.
question is about presidential leadership. And in a crisis, leaders lead and politicians give speeches. President Obama has given a number of speeches, but he hasn't taken a step back and been able to do what a true leader does, which is see a big picture, marshal their resources, delegate responsibility, and take control of the situation. That's why this week Gallup has him down to 44% job approval. The criticism of the president is not ideological. It is about leadership. Americans hire a president to take control, not when times are good, but to lead when times are bad. And frankly, President Obama always seems a little bit stunned anytime there's an unexpected or unpleasant development in the world, and he seems wholly unequipped to deal with it. This is why there was so much criticism during the campaign of him, because he lacked any executive experience whatsoever. This is why Americans over the last 50 years have generally elected governors to the presidency rather than senators, because when you're in the Senate, you can pass off blame onto 99 others. When you are a governor, when you are the head of a company, you are the one who has to take the responsibility and marshal the resources and lead. And we have not seen that from this president in this crisis.
You don't think this is strategic as far as he sees it? That is to not associate yourself too close with this. Let the BP.
You know what? Yes, you're absolutely right. He has spent almost 8 weeks now in this crisis trying to keep it at arm's length. Why? Because he doesn't want the blame and he doesn't want the responsibility. It's a political calculation.
James.
Right. You know, but when he hasn't kept it at arm's length, he's actually made a decision. That's the problem. Decisions have been the wrong decisions. He ignored Bobby Jindal, but he wanted more of those barriers built. The Dutch government said, listen, we got loads of skimmers and we have the greatest technology. Totally ignored them. Had no idea what was going on at MSS. Had no idea. Did the woman get fired? Was she still there? He had no idea. So when the public has seen him in action, they've seen him fumbling. And that's why that criticism by Romney is going to resonate, because people at home, they see the exact same thing, that he seems different, he seems detached, which plays, of course, into the stereotype of him, that he's a community organizer, no executive experience. That's what we feared, and this is what we're seeing.
Okay, it's British Petroleum.
What I don't want to hear is when they're spending that kind of money on their shareholders and spending that kind of money on TV advertising, that they're nickel and diming fishermen or small businesses here in the Gulf who are having a hard time.
Well, so is BP having a hard time. The value of BP's U.S. stock has been cut in half since mid-April. Richard Lambert, the Director General of the CBI, the U.S. equivalent to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which represents U.K. employers, says that the White House strategy is misplaced. Quote, apart from anything else, BP is a vital part of the U.S. energy infrastructure. So the U.S. has an interest in the welfare of BP as much as the rest of the world. Unquote. 35% of BP is owned by U.S. shareholders. Director General Lambert said he was disturbed by the president's implied criticism. Quote, obviously, this is a matter of concern. Politicians getting heavily involved in business in this way always is. David Cameron, the UK Prime Minister, is now also in the act. He emphasized through an aide this week, BP is a global company, unquote. In a word, UK industry appreciates the gravity of the spill, but warns, quote, there is a danger there will be a prejudice against British companies worldwide, unquote.
Many Brits are uneasy because they think that the quote-unquote attacks on BP are dictated by our November midterm elections, which President Obama desperately wants and maybe needs to win. So the U.S. broader strategy is Obama brand villainization with BP in its crosshairs and its manipulation of the blame game, whereas the real story is that BP is suffering from a hemispheric and tragic accident, which the U.S. Regulatory Service, the MMS, if it had fulfilled its obligations, would have prevented. Question. Beating up on BP may well play with domestic audience. Is it bad international global politics? Pat.
John, there's no question that BP is responsible for this leak, and it could not or did not contain it. It didn't know how. The government has failed too, and the BP should have been hit. But I will say this: what Obama and the government is doing now, they're not doing very well, and they just keep beating up on them, and they're driving down the stock. They're doing nothing to resolve this problem. All they're doing is they look like politicians because that's what they are as politicians.
I can't imagine there are many places in this country, except maybe for a boardroom of BP over in London, that is taking this line, that poor BP. They are guilty of, at the very least, negligence, probably criminal negligence. If an American company did this in the North Sea, what do you think the response of Europe would be? They'd want to nationalize that company. And I think this president, if anything, has been way too measured and taken BP's assurances too easily.
What
and
about
I think,
that, Monica?
Well, I mean, there is a danger now that this is tipping into a real international incident, because you have now the British government being called upon, the Prime Minister, David Cameron, being asked to be a lot more strident in his resistance to the attacks coming out of this White House. Look, this is nothing new coming from this president. He needs an enemy, John. He has demonized the banks, demonized Wall Street, demonized healthcare companies, demonized Fox News, demonized the Republicans. So this is his default position, demonize BP, when what the White House should be doing. There will be plenty of time to assign blame, do the lawsuits, do the culpability, but right now they should be working as partners to try to plug the damn hole and get the area
BP had their attorneys out on the ocean hours after the explosion, trying to get workers to sign statements. The lawyers have been involved from the beginning.
My point is that they should be working together rather than demonizing each other.
He is not demonizing BP.
Do you think we have any liability in this at all? Do you think that BP should pay all the bills?
BP.
May I read something?
Yes,
and
may I finish my point? They have minimized the amount of oil coming out of that hole because the fees have to do with the amount of oil, and they get tripled if there's negligence and quadrupled if there's criminal negligence.
Let me read
talking in the billions
of dollars. In the interest of elucidation, not in the interest of a personal opinion.
Okay.
This is from the government manual on what the Minerals Management Service does. It assesses the nature, extent, recoverability, and value of leasable minerals on the outer continental shelf. The service conducts extensive environmental studies and consultations with state officials prior to issuing leases, easements, or rights of way. Once permits or other approvals have been issued, inspectors conduct frequent inspections of offshore operations and environmental studies. Personnel collect data to ensure that marine and coastal environments are kept free of pollutants.
Yes.
Clearly, there's responsibility there.
Yes.
You don't issue the permit when you're going a mile down.
And the papers that BP submitted assured that they could take care of the walruses and the polar bears in the Gulf. They cut and pasted from other jobs. They knew for a year and a half there was a problem with it, and they didn't do anything about it.
Who did?
Clinton administration, the Obama administration, they knew for a year and a half, I got Clinton on the mind, they knew for a year and a half there was a problem there. They had a year and a half, they didn't just get into office last week.
So we should take some of the liability.
This is like the financial crisis all over again. Listen, we all know the banks were responsible, but what about the regulators? They didn't do their job in the financial crisis.
John,
they have done their job here.
You feed that lie to the Republican candidates and take it out
You don't think when this comes to a court of law, you don't think that the BP lawyers are going to quote the obligations of the MMS and say you have liability too?
But John, get back to your question.
Look, I want to hear from this crisis.
Let Buchanan.
The thing is, what benefit from beating the company to death? Now, they're responsible officials, but they've got thousands or millions of shareholders. They got lots of people working who are innocent people involved. Let's go after the head guys that did it, but don't beat this company down to where you destroy the thing.
Was this an accident?
I think it was an accident, but it was a mistake because it wasn't neglect. I think yes.
You think neglect was?
I think there was because
on the part of MMS?
On the part of BP. They were not prepared to cut that thing off.
And MMS.
But look, there is plenty of time to do the investigation and assign culpability. We still have tens of thousands of barrels of oil gushing into the Gulf of Mexico. We should be working together here and not assigning this blame game.
They are working together.
Is it your felt intuition that this stream of oil coming from the seabed is permanently unstoppable?
No, I think it will be stopped when they get the couple of extra wells in there, and they can probably cap the main one leaking. But John, this is years and years
to get the
of
extra
damage.
wells, they have to drill down for a mile.
They're doing
Secure
it now.
those
They're going
wells.
to do that.
Now, if the BP couldn't do it,
They're
what makes
doing
you
it
think
now.
they can do it?
2 wells are going down right now, which should go in August, release the pressure, and then they can cap the other.
You believe that?
Yeah, and I do believe there's going to be years of damage, and parts of it will never recover.
But it will be stopped.
Yes, and BP,
Someday.
BP
Someday.
only wanted
In your lifetime.
In my time.
BP only wanted to do one relief well, and the administration forced them to do a second one in case the first one doesn't work. So let's hope one of the two work. Because I think confidence in BP is certainly
BP and the government have gotten 35,000 ideas from entrepreneurs and thinkers and engineers right now. They can't process all 35,000, but one of these ideas eventually is going to work. The problem is that so much.
How long is it going to take?
I mean, now they're
Will it
pushing
take
it back
to Thanksgiving or
Christmas
Christmas?
time.
August.
They're now talking
August?
That relief well is no sure deal, let me tell you.
What do you mean by that?
They have to hit a very narrow target with that relief well. You know, a few inches that way, a few inches that way. It's like the size of a home plate.
And what happened?
Oil keeps on coming. Then it's bring out the nukes.
You mean they could multiply
That's
the
right.
gushing component?
It's not inches.
The gushing force.
You're not serious
another
about
well?
inches.
Huh?
You're not serious about inches.
I
mean,
think
they, as long as they hit the same
the relief-
reservoir of oil.
It is still a fairly narrow space that they're going to have to. There's no guarantee. This could go on to Christmas, and that's why I was joking that you don't want to talk about the nuclear.
The technology of the relief well has been proven as much as anything can be proved. I think the odds are good that that's going to be successful.
Is this accident beyond science? That is the rectification of science.
You mean, is it an act of God?
No. Is it just beyond the ability of science
No, it is not.
to intervene?
It is not beyond our ability, even if it takes a long time.
It's beyond the present level of our science.
It is not.
It is. It's never happened before.
They would have plugged it by now.
They would have had it done.
before.
They would have had it done, but they've got a number of ideas. They got more
My
ideas.
thinking is that at best, August is an early date. Issue 2, hear them roar.
I am woman, hear me roar, in numbers too big to ignore, and I know too much to
Women dominated the U.S. primaries this week, and the numbers are in. California, Carly Fiorina, the former CEO of Hewlett-Packard, won the Golden State's Republican Senate primary.
People all across the nation are looking west and saying, holy cow.
Republican Fiorina will confront sitting Democrat Senator Barbara Boxer in November's general election, 5 short months from now. Also, in the Golden State, another executive, the former CEO of eBay, Meg Whitman. She won California's Republican governorship primary.
Here's the really good news. I don't owe anyone anything.
Whitman's opponent will be Jerry Brown, California's former governor and attorney general. In Nevada, Sharon Angle won her Republican primary with the help of the Tea Party.
We need to say to Harry Reid, you have failed and you are fired.
Republican Angle will now oppose Majority Leader in the Senate, Democrat Harry Reid. In South Carolina's Republican primary for governor, State Representatives Nikki Haley shut out Congressman Gresham Barrett by almost a 30-point margin, but not the 50% needed to avoid a runoff a week from next Tuesday, June 22.
People love the fact that South Carolina showed it was going in a different direction.
All in all, party primaries were held in 11 states: Arkansas, California, Iowa, Maine, Montana, North Dakota, New Jersey, Nevada, South Carolina, South Dakota, and Virginia. Of the 111 primaries that took place, 76 women ran in those primaries. 48 out of the 76 women won their race. That's 63% of women who contested the race won.
Question, how do you account for the number of successful women candidates in Tuesday's political primaries? Eleanor Cliff.
Well, I think conservative Republican women were really the stars this week, and I credit in part St. Sarah. She's on the cover of Newsweek this coming week. She's credited with empowering and emboldening conservative women and maybe reshaping the religious right. And I think that looks good in primaries. I don't know how it will play in the fall when you have a broader electorate. I think the two women in California are genuine business women. They spent enormous amounts of money. Whitman spent, I think, $80 million, which works out to about $80 per vote. And they're going to position themselves as outsiders and businesswomen who are running against classical political insiders. But Carly Fiorina, who's running for the Senate, got a rocky start when she was caught on an open mic making fun of Barbara Boxer's hair, saying it's oh so yesterday. And these two Republican women are also social conservatives in a state that's very pro-choice. So maybe those issues will be passed as so yesterday.
Is the article on Palin snarky?
Article on Palin
Newsweek.
snarky?
Yeah,
no.
the Newsweek article.
Hey, John, let me talk about
I
Palin.
think it reports
sure
a genuine trend. Maybe it's snarky
John,
in your view. It's about as snarky as we just were towards President Obama.
Hey, John,
Let's
let
put
me
it
tell you
that
about
way.
the Palin thing.
Okay.
Palin just endorsed and brought up from nothing Nikki Haley from 5% to be governor of South Carolina, the second primary. She endorsed the guy, Terry Branstad, who won in Iowa, is going to be the governor. She's endorsed the governor of Texas.
You mean she brought the Tea Party?
What I'm saying, John, is she is playing a strategic game of endorsing both moderates and conservatives that'll help her in
Is she
2012.
directing the Tea Party stream?
Your Tea Party forget. She's looking at 2012.
I understand that.
Well,
the
says-
de facto,
Sure,
is she
she's
bringing
got
the Tea
Rand
Party
Paul and Ron Paul. She's got the libertarians.
Quickly,
First of all, I need to correct something that Eleanor said. Meg Whitman is not a social conservative. She is
Okay.
pro-choice down the road.
Quickly.
What interests me the most is that there are CEOs as women running because there is a real hunger among the electorate, whether it's men or women, for people who know how to run things, getting into
And
high
have
office.
wealth.
Listen, you would think if there's huge financial meltdown, people would like CEOs, they wouldn't like the wealthy. That's not true. They still trust CEOs.
Issue 3, the comeback kid.
Your message is loud and clear that Washington needs to work for us.
Arkansas incumbent Senator Blanche Lincoln defied the odds and won in her Democratic runoff this week against challenger Bill Halter, 52% to 48%. She did it with presidential help. Not Obama help. Clinton help. Bubba campaigned for Lincoln on the trail and on the tube.
If you want to be Arkansas's advocate, vote for somebody who will fight for you. Vote for Blanche Lincoln.
Question, does this make Bill Clinton the comeback kid? Or is Blanche the comeback kid?
Well, look, Senator Lincoln was struggling, and she had the endorsement of the current president of the United States, Barack Obama. That fell flat, so she called in the big guns, and Bill Clinton came down to his home state, Arkansas, and showed Obama how it's done. And he was able to really help get her over the finish line in her primary. She will probably go on to lose in November. She's running 25 points behind the Republican. But what she did very cleverly, which is a big warning sign for Democrats, is that she made the issue big labor. Big labor poured $10 million into this race, backing up her opponent, a much more liberal guy, the lieutenant governor. She made the issue big labor, and then she took big labor and defined it as a proxy against unpopular Washington and, by extension, unpopular Obama agenda.
Big
she did
labor,
that very cleverly.
Big labor is not popular in a right-to-work Southern state. Granted, Bill Clinton will be the most requested Democratic surrogate, especially for moderate Democrats. He's campaigned now with Harry Reid, who now has a chance possibly to hold on to his seat. Blanche Lincoln won because she positioned herself as standing up for the people against the big banks. She's the architect of the toughest provision to control and regulate the derivatives. And I don't know whether that's going to survive, but the Democrats, in an effort to prop her up, are going to promote her policy making. And she's a better candidate now than she was before.
The issue, John, is Obama. What? The big issue is Obama was irrelevant. He was AWOL. He was missing. Nobody cares about it.
You saw what he did in California when he went out there with Coakley.
John, let me tell you something. Obama is many people in the Democratic Party think Obama is an absentee landlord. I would predict in 2012 he will have a challenge from the left for sure.
I want to get back
and maybe something bigger than that.
I want to get back to the Clintons. We know that Bill Clinton cannot run again, notwithstanding the time that's lapsed between his finishing office. Do we want a Clinton back in the White House? Do you think that people would be comfortable with Hillary? And how formidable a candidate would Hillary be, say, against another woman, in fact, Blanche Lincoln? So we have two women heading up to each party.
Well, listen, I think Hillary Clinton, I think I think had she been able to defeat Barack Obama, and she probably would have done, I think actually even better than what Barack did against John McCain. I think she would love to have the job, even if it's the number 2 job, being a vice president. You're only a heartbeat away. I think she would go with that. I don't think Joe Biden's going to be there for another term. I don't think he's going to be the nominee. So there's going to be a space for her if she wants it.
Do you think the Republicans need a woman on a presidential ticket this go around?
Listen, the knock against them is that they don't have a diverse party. But listen, it's not that they necessarily have to have an affirmative action thing. Would need to have a woman. I think there's going to be plenty of very strong, qualified Republican women in 2012 and 2016. And I don't think we're going to see a Republican ticket for a long time without a woman on the ticket.
John, I don't know that you're going to get a woman on the ticket because the only one you mentioned, I think, is Carly Fiorina. But I will say this. The idea of Obama being in trouble in either not running or going and dropping Biden for Hillary, or if he stands down Hillary running, these are small possibilities, but I think they're real possibilities and they are growing.
You put a negative spin on it, but to look at it the way it's being talked about in Democratic circles is that you use your vice president to set up your successor. And Joe Biden is likely not going to run for president because he's a senior citizen, and that Hillary could replace him as vice president. I think that is plausible, a small plausibility, but it's within the realm of reality.
What's the condition of the Democratic Party?
Well, look, I think there's a real civil war going on the other side. The Democrats like to say, oh, look at all the conflict going on the Republican side. And sure, there is some, but the real civil war is going on the Democratic side.
If President Obama seeks the nomination to run for president as the standard bearer of his party in 12, will he get it?
He could get it. He could be defeated, but if he is, they would lose.
He could be defeated.
He could be.
Has that happened before historically?
No, even Teddy Roosevelt didn't succeed.
Right, and
what about Garfield?
And Ted Kennedy couldn't get the nomination away from Jimmy Carter. He gets the nomination, and he runs.
Because Ted Kennedy couldn't answer the question, why do you want to be president? You know who can? Hillary Clinton.
Tell me what the unemployment rate is. If it's sitting at 9+%, I think anything's possible.
I think he will voluntarily probably decide not to run. Bye-bye.
Investing takes perspective. It comes from navigating up and down markets for 60 years, spotting opportunities at home and abroad. Global investing from Franklin Templeton Investments. Gain from our perspective.